Be seated. Oh, beg your pardon. I'm going to do it again. Look at me now. I have to treat you well. This sitting is resumed. When the suspension was taken, this House was in standing finance committee. To that, it shall now revert.
This Honourable House is now in standing finance committee. Honourable Member for St. James South, you were on your second question. You can, on your follow-up question, you can resume. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Before we went on break, we would have touched on the issue of Barbados ramping up to be able to look at the export of chicken and to take advantage of some of the opportunities that exist around the world and near home to be able to earn foreign exchange and increase the viability for chicken farmers here in Barbados. And in your response, Minister, you spoke about the necessary conditions that need to exist in order for us to succeed. And you'd spoken about the expansion of access to good poultry feed at a reasonable price. And you also spoke about the fact that Barbados needs to be able to meet the sanitary and phytosanitary requirements in some of the markets that we're interested in, and also the issue of labs, having the labs. I'm just wondering if you could expand on the issue of the labs, what it is you're doing, and anything else that is needed to get us export ready, as well as you spoke about speaking to the farmers. It seems to me that if we're going to be successful in the export of any of our products, that we have to be training our farmers in relation to standards. We have to be training the people in the agro-processing space about standards, the issue of meeting certain requirements, the consistency of supply, the consistency in the quality of the product if we're going to be successful. So I would like to hear what are the plans of the ministry for the issue of the labs, the SPS, and helping the industry to improve its performance to meet these standards so that we can be successful in export of our agricultural produce.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Well, there are two labs actually that we are working on in this financial year. The veterinary services and the government analytical services lab. Both are represented here, so what I would do, I would ask Dr. Trotman to speak to the lab at Vet Services, and Mr. Beckles from Gas to speak to what is happening there at the lab. But in terms of the export of poultry, you do well know that we've already passed two pieces of legislation to facilitate that and to bring about the standards that are required. The third piece of legislation to complete the SPS measures is the food safety, which is, we have had consultations with the stakeholders. We've had consultations with the Ministry of Health. We've had consultations with all the other ministries involved so that we can harmonize right across all ministries what is happening. and to equally make sure that when the legislation is passed, it doesn't create a hindrance to the stakeholders who are involved. So we took feedback from the supermarkets, for example, people who are involved in food production, etc. Once the legislation is completed, passed, and then we have the regulations in place, then it starts to speak to the standards that we have to uphold in order for us to be able to adapt the SPS measures properly, and then to be able then to look at how we can look at markets where poultry then can be exported. But as I said earlier, we have done some work with the cruise ships, and that is, for me, low-hanging fruit, and that is where I want us to continue focusing. I would let Dr. Troutman speak about the lab, what is happening, and I will also ask Mr. Beckles after him to speak. Dr. Troutman.
Thank you very much, Minister. Good morning. Mark Troutman, Chief Veterinary Officer. As far as the veterinary services laboratory is concerned, we've had a bit of a setback, but we are now trying to get back operational, contracting an engineer as I probably made clear to you previously, the existing laboratory is not fit for purpose, and it needs to be significantly improved at the very least. And that's what we're doing right now. We've contracted an engineer, a quantity surveyor, to refurbish the existing building for the time being, so we can get working again, providing support services. The laboratory can provide a pretty comprehensive suite of tests that we do need to have in order to support the export of animal products, all animal products. We have the suite of tests that we can provide are things like microbiology, both food microbiology and clinical microbiology. We can do histopathology, we can do serology, we can do molecular biology, PCR testing, which is very critical in certifying that the animals that are being slaughtered for export are safe, are free from certain diseases. And it can also look at other microbial agents as well too. So all of these support laboratory tests that we need to be able to satisfy the export market. We are going to be hopefully back on track providing those services fairly soon once we get the work. So right now, the priority of the laboratory is to get back in operation to support the industry as much as possible. We do have plans for further expansion in terms of the kinds of suite of tests that we can provide, such as testing for certain kinds of contaminations, testing for mycotoxins and those types of things, veterinary drug residues, are areas that the international community requires us to do in order to be able to support the export market. So that's where we're at right now. We have other plans for further expansion of the laboratory. But as I said, right now, the priority is to get the laboratory working again, because we've had a setback, again, stemming from the structural and environmental challenges that we've had with the laboratory over the years. Okay.
Good afternoon, Philip Beckles, Scientific Officer and Head of Microbiology at Analytical Services. GAS basically has a focus on two main areas. One is strengthening our capacity currently and also dealing with some institutional issues. Specifically, we're working with ICA to strengthen our quality management system, as accreditation is going to be a requirement for poultry export. And we are also working with the International Agency for Energy to strengthen our technical capacity, receiving instrumentation like LCMS to do pesticide analysis in feeds and poultry, as well as pesticide residues in terms of charm instruments we've received. Unfortunately, we've also had some lingering issues as well with the building. The building itself is over 40 years old. It's been there since 1980, and it was designed for engineering of that time, and it was also designed for the vision of what was going on then. So currently, we're doing a lot more now than what we were doing then in terms of the number of samples, the types of samples, and the increase in number of monitoring programs that we are asked to participate in, and not just over decades, but over the last few years. For example, in 2015, we were doing like 2,400 samples a year. We've moved to over 4,300 in 2023. So we're realistically doing a lot more. And because of that, we are kind of running out of room. So we are investigating, expanding to properly facilitate the testing that we're doing. And we anticipate that this expansion will include an improved microbiological wing to for molecular biology, some of the areas for which Dr. Shropman was just speaking as well, sample receipt area, lifts, loading bays, and some of these issues, because as it stands, when equipment comes to the laboratory, there's no facility for actually getting it in. So we need to create a facility that actually allows for heavy equipment and specific equipment to be brought in. So that is the plans going forward to assist with the poultry sector. But the current situation is that we have a poorly functioning air conditioning system. So it requires it has a number of issues. It's poorly insulated, and one of the tool chillers is not working. So the issue is that is an issue not only for workers, but also for some of the instruments, as some of the instruments can be sensitive to changes in temperature and humidity. So we're actually addressing these issues has become a priority, which requires an air conditioner overhaul, which means the panels will have to come off the roof, chillers will have to be replaced, and the staff will have to be temporarily relocated. We have identified an area, the NSI lab, which is to be retrofitted for us to continue to do what we do there while the air conditioner retrofitting is going on. So we currently are still analyzing samples, and we're trying to find ways to continue that once the AC is being dealt with. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Another area that I consider to be of great national importance is the issue of the care program, that backyard program for the ordinary citizen. As an MP, I can tell you that one of the challenges that I have faced when I wanted to start urban gardening in St. James South was to discover that a lot of our households no longer eat the carrots and the beets and the sweet potatoes and things of that nature. That we have now created a population in Barbados that prefers macaroni pie and chips and things of that nature. And so we have the problem of NCDs, which I no doubt you'll hear more about that later. But for me, it was of great personal concern because in order for us to build food security, we have to be able to eat that which we grow. And we have a dysfunction now between what the citizen prefers to eat and what they need to eat in order to remain healthy. Therefore, I was excited by the prospect of the care program providing households with the opportunity to be able to grow some of that food that they really, really need. So I would love to have an update from the ministry on where we are with that program, what it will do, what it will offer to the citizens, and if he could possibly project into the future and tell me how soon he thinks we can start it. Minister?
Thank you, Honourable Member. Project CARE is one that I also have deep, deep passion for, simply because this is a project that was conceptualized in the ministry during the COVID shutdown period. And what we were looking at is how we can get people utilizing their time during the shutdown to stay within the curtilage and at the same time do something useful rather than sit in the house all day long. So we came up with Community Agriculture Response for Enfranchisement, and acronym is CARE. Project CARE started with us giving out baby chicks to people who were in need, so that right across Barbados, we were able to share with people who were either unemployed, or at the lower end of the poverty ladder. And what we did was to procure baby chicks from the hatcheries, and those were distributed to people. We did well over 10,000 at the time. And then we started to look at how we could engage corporate Barbados. And that is when Massey came on board with us as well to help provide things like seedlings, seeds. And we also then looked at how we can incorporate the service clubs. We did have a meeting to that effect to incorporate the service clubs as well. And we then spoke with the former Director General of ICA, Dr. Chelston Bradford, to develop a model type of a aquaponic small farm that allows for us to grow tilapia and vegetables as well at the same time. This project I want to see moving. It is chaired by our colleague, the Honourable Member for St. Michael East. And what I want to do this year is to get that project moving where we would distribute the 10 aquaponic farms per constituency and ramp up from there so that those people who are unemployed or those people who like home gardening or community farming can participate. The cost of that is set at $1.5 million, I think it is. And we have before the cabinet a paper which is speaking to how we can get the funds to get that project going. And once cabinet grants its approval, then we are going to roll out that project to include the aquaponic farms, and then we will engage people also to construct small coops that can hold approximately 15, 20 baby chicks so that people can also have some baby chicks as well, and continue then to work with those communities similar to the one in your constituency. And I think your project is a model that we can follow so that people can also come out in the various communities and participate. The allotment gardens as well, in the paper that is before cabinet, it speaks to the allotment gardens. And we're looking at Pine Basin, and we're also looking at how we can incorporate the schools as well. So then that you have the schools participating. You do know that we now have in our possession 50 shade houses or greenhouses that came in from Guyana. And those are also in that cabinet paper. And once those are rolled out across Barbados, then you would see a ramp up of project here, as well as seeing us then moving agriculture back into the schools.
I also wanted to commend you on the enrollment of, I believe, Master Gardeners. Are they're part of that particular project or a different project?
No, you're correct. The Master Gardeners as well, and ICA has facilitated the training for us. So that this is like a sort of a train-the-trainer program where these Master Gardeners will be trained and then they would assist people in the communities so that they also will learn how to do gardening, similar to what you have in the UK. So you get the allotment gardens, you get the people trained, you have I call them the master gardeners, who would then work with the communities as well to make sure that the project doesn't fail. So all of that is about to happen. We did the cabinet paper, and we're likely to get that kick-started this year early.
And my last question, I noted that the ministry in its estimates has identified that it wants to go digital and to use digital technology and so on in a number of aspects of your operations, and I found that fascinating. I'm sure the public would be happy to hear how you are incorporating digital technology to help us be good with our farming and with managing the ministry.
Yeah, well, the project that we are doing at Home Agriculture Station is one that will allow for us to facilitate the type of digital farming that we envisage, but equally at the ministry as well. What I would do is let the Chief Agriculture Officer speak to this. There's a lot that we can achieve through taking this approach, and it's one of the things that we are doing to modernize the sector, really.
Thank you for the question, Honourable Member. Digital agriculture is a very far-reaching topic, and it seeks to not only look with the use of drones and stuff like that, but you're also looking at GPS mapping, so you're not just going to be going out there and looking at a farm, but you can stay from where you are and take pictures of the area. You can look at identifying where a particular pest population is in receipt of a particular crop. You can have a more accurate sort of amount of what is growing. So you can look at accurate yield projections by doing that. You're looking at staying home and actually turning on your sprinkler system within your greenhouses. You're looking at using the photovoltaic to drive your pumps that will wet your particular gardens and whatever. So it's a holistic approach, even the use of artificial intelligence. It is something that we will have to explore some more, because when people hear AI, they think of artificial intelligence and not just artificial insemination. It's a bit different. But when you're talking about AI, this has a very wide scope that you can use within the agricultural base. And these are things that we will be looking at. We ourselves are learning. I don't want people to think that we just go up there and we know everything. But because of the new technology, this is something that we need to harness to use within the agricultural base. So these are just some of the examples that will be used in the whole digitization of agriculture, if you may call it like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I certainly appreciate the answers that you've given. I'm looking forward to the success of Barbados, continued success of Barbados in agriculture.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Philip North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon to all. To the Honourable Minister, I particularly enjoyed your presentation. From what I am seeing on the ground and in here, I think you're doing mostly a good job. I'll leave it at that. I have 3 questions, and I'm here thinking which ones to leave for last, but I think I'll leave the one that bothers me for last most. The first one, recently you, as a ministry, announced the increase on the bounty for monkeys. I'm an animal lover, and there are a few of us out there like that. The question I have, I'm aware of the issues with monkeys in terms of harvesting the crops before we get a chance. Has there been any thought into providing food space for the monkeys, whether it be in the gullies and everything? I mean, we all know the rhesus monkey has an intelligence of a 5-year-old child. And the thought of shooting 5-year-old children bothers me. What are we putting in place? Basically, we took the monkeys' land. We all know that. Where we are living is where they were living. What are we putting in place to ensure that whatever y'all left behind is provided for?
Thank you, Honourable Member. The question is quite timely, actually. And I'm glad that you raised it, because there's a huge misunderstanding about what is happening with the bounty for the monkey hunters. There are a couple of things we agreed on. First and foremost, I could not have attempted to put a program in place to deal with monkeys without first getting past the Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central. And given the fact that I've been able to work with his ministry, and I would have preferred if it was the other way around, to be very frank, because then he gets to make the decisions on what happens. But the truth is there's no flat out going out to cull monkeys as people are trying to project it. Let's get that very, 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 very clear. When we set up the bounty hunting program, what we looked at is how we can work with the Wildlife Reserve. And they were in the meeting with us. The Honourable Member for Christchurch East, the Minister of Home Affairs, was also in the meeting with us. And we looked at how we can take a very humane approach to dealing with the problems that have been reported to us with troops of monkeys destroying crops, fruits on people's trees, and in some instances going into people's homes. So the Wildlife Reserve and us, we had previously set up a hotline where if people saw troops, they can report them. But then we got more and more complaints from farmers who said that their crops were being destroyed. Wherever I go in Barbados, whenever I meet farmers in Barbados, one of the questions I'm continuously asked is, when you're going to deal with the monkeys? So we came up with a solution that, first of all, lend itself to being extremely careful and humane in dealing with them. And the Wildlife Reserve will continue to do the trapping. A lot of monkey trapping takes place in Barbados, but it's not really an easy fix, because after a period of time, once you've captured a certain amount from a troop, then you don't get the others because they don't bother to go in the trap. And then the other thing we looked at is how we can then get the hunters who are already out there, and they've been out there long before all of us who came in 2018. And those hunters have to pay for equipment, for ammunition, everything. And they have made a request to help us deal with this problem if they can get an increase in the bounty. So we gave them really what is pretty much a $5 increase, because the bounty was $15, then it went to $20, and now it's $25. And they have been told in no uncertain terms that when they are going out hunting, it must be done in accordance to what we have agreed on, and we set up a set of protocols. For example, they can't hunt monkeys in gullies. So the monkeys in gullies are pretty much safe. They're not supposed to go in gullies like Welchman Hall Gully, etc., and that is written in the paper that we presented as well. They are not supposed to go in neighborhoods loosely and cull monkeys either. This has to be a very controlled, well-organized things. But certainly on farms where crops are planted, and certainly in areas where there are fruit trees, where there are orchards, etc., they will go in an organized fashion to do either the capturing or the culling. So it is not a case of Barbadians walking around with a gun, as someone tried to project on brass tacks on Sunday, which I thought was a fairly loose statement, to be very honest. We don't have people walking around loosely shooting monkeys, so that is a no-no. And the person that did it with extreme wickedness, because clearly that person has an interest in monkeys for their own commercial activity. But you have farmers who are losing crops, and that is their commercial activity as well. So how do we balance the two? And if a person seeks to convey the impression that people are loosely going around shooting monkeys, even to convey that impression to the world, to the Barbados Police Service, is a very sinister act, because that is not what is happening, and it ought not to have happened the way the person conveyed it. And I make absolutely no apologies for saying that we have respected all the people who came to us to give their opinion about how we should handle this, and we ended up with a final project that allows for us to bring control to the situation that is taking place with monkey troops going all across Barbados, and people have been complaining to us. At the end of the day, our constituents are Barbadians. Barbadians that repose their trust and confidence in us to do right. And if we are having a problem with monkey troops, we are not seeking to wipe them out, and I don't want anybody to get that impression, but we are seeking clearly to bring balance to it. And at some point in time, some will be culled, but certainly not all, and not in any disorganized fashion. Trust I've answered your question, Honourable Member.
Except for what are you doing for the monkeys in terms of feeding?
The Ministry of Environment is returning to planting fruit trees in the gullies. And there's a project that they're currently working on. The project is already in place. So that is the reason why we're not doing any capturing or culling in the gully spaces, because they're planting fruit trees. They have a trees project that would allow for us to get more fruit trees and for the monkeys to be able to find food.
Thank you very much. I feel a lot more comforted after your intervention there. The second question I had is not really so much a question, but if you choose to answer, because I want to get to the crux of the matter, with respect to pesticides and the control of pesticides. I had applauded you. Yes, you put the containers in the fields and so on, but how do you, and this is for my own education, how do we control pesticides effectively? Many of you would have seen my Facebook post. I say 6 + 8 dogs to gramoxide poisoning in 2 days. How efficient is the Ministry of Agriculture's control of pesticides in terms of who is allowed to buy them and so on?
Honourable Member, thanks again. That's an extremely good question. We had prepared a cabinet paper to look at the controlled use of pesticides. And we had also gone as far as looking at how certain types we would actually recommend banning. There is a project within the ministry that is being managed by the registrar or deputy registrar of pesticides. And the board basically is looking at an overall program. What you saw at River when we did the launch was only part of a whole program. And then since then, we have put out some PSAs on radio telling people how to use pesticides and what they're supposed to do. After using the pesticides, how you dispose of the containers and things like that. It also spoke to how pesticides can harm and why one has to be careful. The Chief Agriculture Officer can speak to this project and give you more details in terms of the use of pesticides, but I would like to hear more about how the dogs were poisoned with gramoxone, because I'd like to see what is happening there, and if we need to intervene, then we will.
Thank you for your question, Honourable Member. The whole idea of pesticides, as any AIDS, as you know, so anything it kills is there to kill. How do you adequately go about making sure that persons do what they should? Now, it starts with your application. So we don't just, person's not allowed to just bring chemicals into use. But you always know that there's somebody who's willing to take a chance. We have no control over that. But chemicals, or if somebody wants to bring a particular pesticide, it is brought in. We look at the whole pesticide. How does it move in water? What is it supposed to do? How does it, would it damage animals, including frogs, not just dogs and whatever, any type of animal. And based on that, we will do a write-up and say, well, yes, this is allowed for this particular crop under these conditions. Now, very often, you know, Barbadians like this thing that once it can kill a particular pest, they can abuse it to the sense that if 1 teaspoonful is good, 3 teaspoonful is better. And that is something that we've tried to make sure that we get people to understand that you stick to the right rate, because using incorrect rates not only damages the environment, but it also lends to what we call resistance to the particular chemical. So if you keep on using the chemical at high rates and whatever, you will find that when you spray it, the particular pest will not die. All right? So that is one. Two, we've looked at, as the minister said, looked at making sure now that we are more visible. So we looked at the triple rinse method. You should not reuse chemical containers. We've tried to get out there to encourage persons that not only you don't use the containers, there are actually alternatives which might be more organic. So we look at the use of soaps, the use of ultrafine oils. So there are a number of different products, the use of other insects, biological control, to control a particular insect instead of having to use chemicals. So that is another way that we go about it. The minister, as he said, we are also looking to have what we call a list that would entail that certain pesticides cannot be bought by normal household persons, all right? Or if they're bought, they're already mixed. So you can't go then to mix them. So you just use it from the can. And the other area that we are very interested in is actually now that to spray a pesticide, be it on a farm or whatever, you will have to be trained. Okay, so it's no longer that you can just pick up somebody and say, okay, hey, fella, come and spray my ground for me. That, unless you have a certification that you know how to mix the chemical properly, you know how to dress properly, you're not in Elsa Clench. So some person still go and still in Elsa Clench, you know. It's not like that. So those are the things that we are now looking to introduce. So hopefully, as the time goes on, we will have more of these being introduced, but it's going to be buttressed by a really good PR program, because we have found that you can't just introduce things without alerting persons or giving them the knowledge that these things will be introduced. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The final question, or I'm pleading here now. I came from St. Philip North, St. Philip on the whole, with a heavy burden on my shoulders, not only for myself, but several of the residents. And you would know St. Philip North is a large farming area. I am used, and I'm going to talk about me first. I am used to paying X amount of land tax every year for the last umpteen years. I opened my land tax bill last year and almost had a seizure. It moved from $3,300 roughly to $8,300. I called my neighbors who are also farmers, some of them, one of them moved from $475 to $4,512, and they are legitimate farmers. I remember I have 25 broilers, 6 layers, 5 lettuce in the ground, lots of coconut trees and a few fruit trees. I do not make a profit off of any agricultural business. My neighbors, however, that's their livelihood. The incentive, this is something that needs to be looked at. This does not lend well to incentivizing farmers to do what I personally feel it was a mistake. I went because I don't want to throw around what little weight I have. But I went like a normal citizen and made the relevant calls, one of which was not the prettiest. I was treated so badly, but anyway, that's another thing. And some of my neighbors are adamant that they're not paying the land tax. I have started to pay, but God knows $8,000, that's more than I'm making here today, this month. I think that needs to be looked at if you're going to right now I am being, I think from my calculations, being taxed for non-residential property. I live there with my 3 dogs that still live in, that I bought. I have pleaded with the minister responsible in finance. I really got nowhere, so I'm asking you to kindly speak to your cabinet colleagues, land tax department, I don't really care, something, because people are suffering with these rates. I am aware one of the residents, this is not in my area, but one of my friends, his moved from 900 to 1,200, not agricultural at all, but that's just on an aside. And as far as I'm aware, land tax was supposed to decrease. I don't know if you have a comment, but this is the only place I can find to bring it up in the public sphere, and I'm waiting to hear if other members of the public have the same issues.
Well, what I can say to you that is a matter that has taken me by complete surprise. So therefore, I know that you mentioned you did speak to the relevant minister, and I will have a similar conversation on the matter. I do not think that it is anything that can be resolved. We came to government to govern. We came to this place to make sure we are doing what is right by people. There may very well be a good explanation. What I will do is ask Mr. Connolly to comment if he knows anything about what is taking place there. But equally, I'm prepared to address the issue. And all I can do at this point in time is ask you to hold. Let me get to the bottom of it. Let's find out what is happening. And if it is something that needs a fix, then I will make the necessary recommendation.
Honourable Minister, that question really should reside in the Ministry of Finance. And
Point of
therefore,
order, by the way, Mr. Chair.
And Honourable Member, let me finish.
All right.
That question predominantly resides with the Ministry of Finance, which is not in the well right now. And any further comments should be, I think the matter should be picked up directly with the ministry.
Can I comment, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
I have tried to bring up with the relevant ministry. Part of it is because they're perceiving it as agricultural land. And as far as I'm concerned, this is the Ministry of Agriculture. So in my mind, I have a right to bring it up here. The minister was quite right in saying he will find out and investigate for me. So I beg to differ on your opinion. I have even gone to the Ministry of Agriculture to look about rebates. So it does belong in part to the Ministry of Agriculture.
Yes, Honourable Minister, it's not my opinion. It's at the end of the day, it's what the chair has ruled. And I have said to you, Honourable Member, that the matter can be referred and directed to the Ministry of Finance, the relevant minister. I understand what you're saying, but it is inappropriate. We ruled similarly yesterday, and we have to be consistent with our ruling. Thank you.
Well, I wait with bated breath to see the Ministry of Finance in that well. I pray and wait. Anyway, that brought to the end of my questions. I still want to say for the record that this belongs partly in the Ministry of Agriculture. I have tried with the Ministry of Finance to no avail. To no avail. But at least now it's in the public sphere because other people are suffering like I am. And that's the end of my comment.
I did ask Mr. Connolly, who deals with services, who deals with rebates and concessions, etc. He may be able to bring some clarity to the situation. And if I ask your leave to ask Mr. Connolly to address the matter so that agriculture is cleared where this is concerned. And if we need further intervention, as I said, I'm prepared to make the necessary steps towards resolving the issue, if in fact there is a major issue.
Thank you, Minister. Proceed, Mr. Connolly.
Arlie Connolly, officer in charge of Extension Services. The land tax rebate is one that we offer through the Extension Services unit. We basically prepare a letter indicating that the person is a farmer and that the land is in agriculture. It must be a minimum of a quarter acre. And we did all that we had to do from our end as the Ministry of Agriculture. There are times that we prepare letters and for some reason BRA do their own thing and will say no to farmers that are legitimately farming on 4, 5, even 2 acres of land. So I will have to say that matter is out of my hand and rests with the BRA and Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Connolly. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Honourable Member for St. James Central.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do now report progress to His Honour the Speaker and ask for leave to sit again.
The question is that I do now report progress to Her Honour the Deputy Speaker and beg for leave to sit again. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Members, our chairman has reported progress and has asked to leave again.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that the House be now suspended for lunch until 2:15.
The sitting has been suspended to break for lunch. The question is that this sitting has been suspended to break for lunch until 2:15 this afternoon. Honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. You think the ayes have it. This session is now suspended until 2:15 p.m.